Hi everyone, Coldon here with another VOX Immortalis commentary guide. This video is for the Maloriak encounter in Blackwing Descent, and this shows normal 10-man. We use 2 tanks and 2 healers on this fight, and you could probably get away with 3 healers or 3 tanks, 2 healers if you preferred, but it just depends on your raid's DPS whether you can beat the Berserk timer. These days we could probably do 3 of one of them, but anyway, I'll show you the 2 and 2 strategy. So throughout the fight, Maloriak will use a couple base abilities. The first one is Arcane Storm, which he just cast there. It's interruptible, but it does raid-wide AE damage, so make sure you have someone assigned to interrupting that. Another one is Remedy, which he just used a little bit ago, and it's a buff he gains that heals him for 150,000 that stacks every second. So first second is 150, and then 300, then 450, and so on. So it's important to purge or spell steal or whatever to get that off of him really quick. So we have a mage assigned to do that. And he'll also use the vials that are on his belt there and throw them in the cauldron behind him, and that triggers his phases. So the first phase he triggers can be either red or blue, it's random. If it's red, your raid should really sort of stack up in front of him. You don't have to be on top of each other, but you have to be within a cone in front of him for the ability he just used there called Scorching Blast. Scorching Blast does 500,000 damage on 10-man, and it splits it among all targets in front of him in 60 yards. So generally you'll have 9 people in front of him at any given time when he casts it. So a little over 50,000 damage, pretty easy. You'll have 1 or 2 people running out to avoid getting hit by that cone because they get a debuff called Consuming Flames, which is just cast randomly. And it basically does a little bit of fire damage, but more importantly, it will take 50% of the damage from Scorching Blast if that player gets hit by it, and add it onto the dot. So that's a really big amount of damage. So make sure the Consuming Flames target runs away. The next phase is the blue phase. You can see he's entering now. And unlike the red one where you stack up in front of him, the blue phase you need to spread out at least 6 yards. So you can see our melee don't really have to move for this fight because they can just stay at that spot even when he goes to the cauldron. But our ranged and healers have to spread out, and that's because he'll use Biting Chill, which again is on a random person, and it just does frost damage to them and people around them in a short distance. He'll also use Flash Freeze, which will encase a raid member in frost and deal heavy damage to them, but more importantly, they will also be blocked and not able to do anything until someone attacks the block and gets them out. So you can see in the back there, our shaman is turned to a block, and ranged DPS will get him out of it. So that's the blue phase. And then the last phase is the green phase, which I'll explain in just a moment. If you notice in the back right though, there's a bunch of adds called aberrations, and they're being off-tanked by our paladin. And he just spawned the 4th set of adds that we allowed. So during the first phase, he has the potential to cast Release Aberrations 5 times. It's a 1-second cast, unless he's affected by Curse of Tongues or similar. And if he's allowed to cast it and you don't interrupt, then each set of adds will spawn 3 aberrations in the back of the room. So your off-tank should pick them up. And in our case, we let 4 sets go through. We interrupt the first one, and then we let the next 4 go through, so there's 12 total, you can see there. And now he's entering the green phase, which is the time that you actually kill adds. And the reason you do this at the green phase is because Maloriak will cast Debilitating Slime on everyone, all the adds, himself, and all the raid. And this basically increases the damage taken by 100%, but it also negates the buff ability that the aberrations use on each other and on Maloriak if they're close enough. So that buff is called Catalyst Growth, or Growth Catalyst maybe. And basically what it does is, for each add, it will increase the stack of growth catalysts on every other add within 10 yards or on Maloriak, and it increases the damage they deal by 20% per stack, and also reduces the damage they take by 20% per stack. So at at 3 stacks, meaning the first set of adds, when there's only 3 of them, they only hit the tank for around 2,000, maybe 2,500. Pretty weak. But at 12 stacks, which is what we had there a moment ago, they hit around 20,000 damage on the tank. So it's really important, depending on your gear and all that stuff, to plan to have cooldowns on your off tank once the adds set gets up to 9 at least, and certainly if it gets to 12 if you're doing that. It's also worth noting there are a total of 18 adds that can spawn over the course of the fight. So once you've spawned all 18, it doesn't matter if you cast Release Aberration anymore, nothing else will happen. So in this particular kill, you might have seen I was tracking the achievement in the bottom left. We're going for the achievement, which requires killing 12 adds within 10 seconds and then defeating Maloriak. And his Berserk timer is such that you will get 2 green phases and then have enough time to actually kill him during the last phase. You won't get a 3rd green phase though, so you need to plan your add killing accordingly. So if you're learning the fight, the best thing really to do is to, during the first phase, meaning during the blue and the red phase at the start, before green happens, you need to interrupt 2 of his 5 total aberration casts. And if you want to lower the damage on the tank, you can either interrupt the first 2 and then let the next 3 go, or interrupt 1, let 1 go, interrupt, let the next 2 go, whatever you want. But basically, if you want to keep the damage as low as possible on the off tank to simplify the fight, then do 3 sets of 3 before the first green, so interrupt 2, and then you'll do the same thing, just let the next sets go off after the first green, and you'll get the final 9 spawns. And then, of course, during green, AE all the adds down. So that's all the abilities used throughout the fight except for the final phase, which I'll explain when we get there. But essentially you can see we've stopped DPS on Maloriak for a little bit now, and that's because our DPS in the raid is actually high enough that if we kept going we would have hit 25% health on Maloriak, and at 25% that's when he goes into his final phase. But we don't want any aberrations alive because otherwise the off tank will basically die. So when he hits 25%, he will cast Release All Minions, which basically causes all aberrations that had not been spawned previously to instantly all spawn from the back of the room. Plus we'll also spawn 2 additional more deadly adds called Prime Subjects. So if you have Prime Subjects alive and aberrations, Prime Subjects will get the buffs from the aberrations. They'll hit really, really hard, and your off tank will probably die. So try to plan things out so that all the aberrations, or most of them at least, are dead before that final phase, because you'll want to focus, as much of your healing as you can on the off tank, but obviously sometimes it can be unhealable. So in our case, what we did is, because our damage was so high on Maloriak, we stopped on him early, and we actually focused DPS on the aberrations. And remember that they have a damage reduction, so the more that are alive, the less damage you can actually do to them, since we're not in a green phase. But the advantage of doing that this way is actually that now all the aberrations are dead, and Maloriak will enter his final green phase, so we'll have 15 seconds where he will take 100% more damage, and this really allows us to burn a lot of his health off before he actually starts much of his 3rd phase stuff. So there he's using Release All Minions. So some strategies suggest that you don't actually let minions spawn early, don't let aberrations spawn, and then you just wait for this phase, you grab them all when they all spawn, and then you just blow cooldowns and try to keep your off tank alive while you kill Maloriak. But I really recommend doing it the normal way, the intended way. That is extremely hard to keep up someone. So, but as you can see, during that 15 seconds of the green debuff, we got a good 10% of his health off. So we got him down to like 15 or 16%, pretty much for free. So his final phase is actually pretty short and pretty simple. He uses 3 abilities. He'll cast sort of a nature-based rain effect, an AE. he'll cast these flame lines in front of him on the tank. So when he raises his arm up and there's a fire effect, the tank needs to sidestep, otherwise it'll do a lot of damage, knock them in the air, they'll take fall damage, all that. And then he'll also randomly cast Absolute Zero on a raid member, which is just basically it will explode and do frost damage and knock people away if they get hit. So just kind of spread out, make sure he's tanked facing away and move around the room. And the last phase is pretty simple if all the aberrations have been killed before. So, that's Maloriak. Good luck, and thanks for watching.